Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined by Ali Moreno, Craig Burley and Stevie Nicol. We start today's show in Europe. Of course, the last round of these matches in qualifying. England taking on Kosovo at St Mary's, and what a game it turned out to be. Kosovo took the lead early. England then scored 5. Kosovo scored a couple in the second half, meaning that Gareth Southgate's men won by 5 goals to 3. Where do we start here, Craig? Do we start with positives or negatives?
No, we start on it's a qualifying campaign, which England always get out of with consummate ease, because they're better than the other teams in there by quite a stretch, and usually the other teams are not very good. I think that's where we are. England are... I'm sick and tired already. We're not even at the Euros, and we had it at the World Cup, and you know I'm not an England hater at all. At all. But already, when England were 1-0 down, they came back to be 3 and 4-1 up. I thought they'd just scored 4 goals against Brazil. Or France.
That wasn't my reaction, by the way. It's not me. You're not...
No, but, you know, it wasn't you. I went on social media and it was journalists, and I can understand the supporters, but there's all these people following the England team, and I'm thinking, Kosovo are a recently recognised entity into this format, and they're 120th in the FIFA rankings, whether you like the FIFA rankings or not. So, whilst England do some great things going forward, particularly against teams like that, there are deficiencies at the back, but honestly, it's hard to stomach some of it. Yeah. I mean, it really is. We're not even at the damn Euros. We're not even close to it. So I'm like, you know, that's where I am with it. England are exciting to watch. I understand that. But it's hard to stomach a lot of the people that follow them and the sycophancy that trails behind them. Sorry, it had to be said.
Let's talk about the defence, Stevie.
Yeah, I think if you're Gareth Southgate, then that has to be your concern. No question. When you score 5 goals, your job's done going forward. So now you have to look at what happens at the back. And I think going forward, he's got a bit of a headache of figuring out what...
All 3 of them, there were stupid errors, wasn't it?
Well, for me, it comes down to the central defensive partnership with Keane and Maguire. Now, I prefer to have a pairing that complements each other. And the fact that both Maguire and Keane, for me, none of them have got any real pace. They're both pretty good on the ball, Maguire being better, and they're both strong in the air. I don't think any of them covers particularly well, and I don't like the pairing. Now, Michael Keane, I don't think, is an international centre-back. You know, the goal that he gave away after 30 seconds is complete and utter lack of composure. He's nervous. I mean, you're playing against Kosovo. What are you going to be like if you're playing against Brazil? So, he has to find a partner for Maguire.
Well, it'll be Stones. Probably.
Who again? I mean, he can't get a game for Manchester City, so how can he step in and play for England?
Well, they will now that they've got injuries. Laporte's out. He might take Kyle Walker, who was left out of the squad, and play with a back 3.
Right.
You know, and he has done that before. So when they play the better teams, is my point, then...
But the good thing is, because they're in such an easy group, and there's no way they're not qualifying,
no, they always,
now it gives them an opportunity to try something. Pull somebody, have a look around. There must be somebody who can complement Maguire. Right. Now you can try and do that through the rest of this campaign.
But how easy is that to do against this sort of opposition?
Well, it's a lot easier to do it against the kind of opposition than it is against the big boys.
No, I understand that, but you're getting really tested. That's the issue, isn't it? As you say, if you find this person, whoever it may be...
But you see signs. When you stick somebody in there, you can see signs of either a partnership or you can see signs of an individual. Today I didn't see a partnership, and today I saw that Michael Keane as an individual is not good enough. So between now and qualifying, which they are, you have to figure out, can you find that? Can you find a partner for him? Right. And can you find somebody who actually you can rely on?
I think what you can find out is that you should expect from a player like Michael Keane, playing against Kosovo, at home, a drama-less afternoon. Yeah. And yet, it was drama-filled. From the very beginning, you make that pass, you lose the ball in a bad area, you give up a goal, and you know that's playing games in his head. Then he has a chance to relax because, well, he can say, well, I assisted on the Sterling goal, and so therefore I can settle down. And yet, as the game went on, there were more and more issues that came up with Michael Keane. And so that's where I agree with Stevie and say, yeah, this guy just didn't look the part. Because if you're struggling against Kosovo, what is to be expected in playing against some of the bigger teams? The other thing I would say is that it's a useful exercise for Gareth Southgate in the sense that he can go back to his team and say, you know what? we thought the game was over.
Right.
And that's how we approached it in the second half. And so even though it's human nature to say, 5-1, we are dominating this team is nowhere near our talent level, at some point you got to be able to close these games out. And again, I go back to what I just said earlier, it should be drama-less, not drama-filled. And in the second half, you allowed 2 goals, and now it's like, wait a minute now. We have a game in our hands where there shouldn't be. England should be much better, and it should be a whole lot easier to close out a game that you're winning 5-1.
The bottom line here is, apart from the odd case, is we never really find out about the real teams until the major championships. Because generally qualification, generally, not always, but generally is pretty simplistic in the European side for the bigger boys. And to give you a prime example was Germany at the World Cup. Nobody saw that coming. Because qualification, and actually, now that you look back, the signs were actually there. You just couldn't see it. It wasn't easy to pinpoint through a relatively easy qualification. Then they go to the World Cup, and it's exposed. And now we're seeing the after effects with Germany. With England, it's the same. I think the World Cup semi-final for me has been a huge smokescreen to where they are tactically and defensively. Because going forward, we absolutely know that Harry Kane would walk into probably somewhere in the top 5 club teams in world football. Raheem Sterling arguably would as well. That's backed up by Sancho at Dortmund, Rashford and others. That's not a problem. That is not an issue for them. The issues were at the other end, and I felt when they got to that Croatia game in the World Cup, which obviously they went out at, they were horribly exposed against Croatia, and I think we'll probably see that if they pull a bigger boy in the Euros in 2020.
And that's what I find strange, as you say. You go on social media and you have all these journalists who start saying this and that. When was the last time England beat anybody of any note? From qualifying for the World Cup, the only team of note that they've beaten was at the World Cup in Colombia on penalties. Everybody else they've lost to. And that's in the space of what, many years?
Well, the Nations League, they beat Spain in Valencia. Or Seville, but I know it's not. It's competitive and somewhat, but it's not.
In tournaments, they can't beat anybody.
That front three, as you say.
I get a feeling there'll be a lot of people watching this saying, "How can they talk about England when Scotland are so bad?" Cut through that nonsense. It's not about. We're not talking about Scotland because we know they're not. They're not in this. And England have a potential to go to the Euros and put some good performances on, but if you're picking apart where it might fall down for them, I think we saw a little bit of that tonight, barring some big personnel changes.
He mentioned Sterling, he mentioned Kane. Sterling was fantastic. Jadon Sancho getting a couple of goals as well. If they're playing tomorrow, saying it's the Euro final, who does he play, Jadon Sancho or Marcus Rashford, to make up that trident?
I will play with Jadon Sancho. And the reason I do that is because I think then Marcus Rashford can come off the bench and give me the change of pace that I would need late in the game to stretch the team and what have you. But Jadon Sancho over the course of 90 minutes, I think gives me more flexibility as to what I can do in the attack and what I can do out of the midfield, what I can do in joining in the attack potential with a Kyle Walker overlapping a Jadon Sancho. You put those things to get those 2 players together, and now we're talking, because you have the double threat of Jadon Sancho. Does he tuck inside and Kyle Walker goes on the outside, or does Sancho go outside and Kyle Walker come on the inside? You give options that perhaps you don't have with Rashford. Rashford could just be the natural substitute to that out-and-out striker, or if you need to make it into 2 strikers late into the match.
To think about some of the stick that over the last 2 or 3 years, not so much recently, but the last 2 or 3 years, Raheem Sterling's taken. And really, I think it's been totally unwarranted. Okay, he's finishing, you can look at which has got better. No doubt it's got better. And he did have a time where his end product in the final third was a little frustrating. But he's still been, arguably over the piece, England's most exciting, attacking, biggest threat whenever on the ball. And his game has just gone so far in terms of end product, and it's hard to judge totally tonight, but some of the things he did was great. But, his game just gets better and better.
Picking a pass, yes, I think his finishing can be better still, but I'll tell you what, his decision-making, when he's running at full pace, picking a pass, has been absolutely exceptional.
Meanwhile, elsewhere today, Portugal with a 5-1 victory over Lithuania. Cristiano Ronaldo with a hat-trick. Some are saying he got 4 goals. It was quite the era from...
No. Some are wrong.
Apparently,
Some are wrong.
UEFA have given him the goal.
No.
Apparently.
Is this a spoof?
No, I don't think so. I've just been told.
No.
UEFA, that's going to keep us going for at least 7 days, UEFA.
We're wondering what we're going to talk about in tomorrow's show. We'll just do a special.
Well, if the US get beat again, we'll have to talk about them. That's another story. Well, I mean, sort it out. Okay, he scuffed the shot, the keeper saved it, it popped up, hit him on the back of the head of the shoulder and went in, and they've given it to Cristiano.
Apparently, that's what I've been told.
It's Cristiano, wasn't it?
Huh?
It's Cristiano. It's for... He'll take it, won't he?
Oh, he's taking it.
I'm going to argue.
He's asked for the 5th as well.
Just a reminder, if you it's the show you can download. Where is Shagger? Our daily
Wow,
podcast
that's a good question.
over on the website. Meanwhile, in Group H, France in action today, beating Andorra by 3-0. Meanwhile, Turkey with a 4-0 win away against Moldova means that they remain top on the same points as France. Juliana Ron is with us. Jules, what's your big takeaway from France's victory today?
Today was a good one as well, a bit like the one against Albania on Saturday, against Andorra. It was never in doubt that they would win. It was all about the changes made by Deschamps. He made 4 changes, a few new faces, the 2 fullbacks, one of the 2 wingers as well. It was good to see Kingsley Coman scoring again. That's 3 in 2 for the young Bayern Munich winger, who is trying to get back into that team, back into the squad after missing out a lot because of injuries. There was no Kylian Mbappe, obviously. So it was interesting to see, attacking-wise, how that team did and what kind of football they produced. And on both games, it was good. Tonight as well, even if there was a less movement than on Saturday. But Griezmann missed another penalty like he did on Saturday. So 2 in 2 mixed for him, which is the only bad point of the night. But overall, it was a good evening, I think, for Deschamps. And the 2 wins after the defeat in Turkey in June, I think that the team bounced back in style and like he wanted.
That's it now, boys. Euro qualifying over for a while.
Do you know what? I've never been on the FIFA rankings as much as I have today. You know where Andorra are?
No.
Yeah, but the last thing, 136 or thereabouts.
Thank you very much for that information, Craig.
All right.
Against the world champions.
Right.
Do you know what to learn from it? Absolutely zero.
Well, Jules learned lots, apparently.
He's just telling you that, isn't he? Tell you anything. Jules will tell you anything. What did you learn from... What did the world champions learn from beating the 136th ranked team in the world?
Here we go.
At home?
Right, good. I'm looking forward to
Where's Andorra on this list? I'll tell you. There's not enough pages.
Not very close.
Right. Jules, I'm going to start with you.
What did you learn?
France are favourite
I could have played, by
to
the
win the Euros. Overall, what we've seen over the last
What have you learned?
few matches,
Listen, sort your questions out.
which team has stood out?
Yeah, I think France would be among the favourites, of course, after the World Cup triumph 2 years ago. I think the Netherlands have looked very, very strong with that new generation coming through. We saw that again against Germany in Germany on Friday night. I think England and Spain will have to be there. Italy under Roberto Mancini having a little bit of a revival. It might be a bit too early the next summer for them to reach the final maybe, or even to win it. But I think they're rebuilding and they do that quite well. But I think it would be quite open once again this Euro this summer, because I think even if France maybe for people are the biggest favourite, I think Belgium will also be in the mix, and like all the other teams that we've been saying. So I can see a very open tournament, and I'm a bit biased, but I would put the French right up there with amongst the base favourite.
Would anyone else like to list all the teams?
Well, I'll tell you what, I watch a tournament with Andorra, Kosovo,
Why do you keep bringing
Gibraltar,
up that? What are you bringing up them for?
Scotland.
They'll be out by then. All those teams.
Some of them will get in through the Nations League.
Not many of them.
Too many. I'll tell you. Hey, I'll tell you. What do you want to know?
Who's impressed? Oh, no, I don't want to speak to you anymore. Right, who's
It's like being at home.
What do you mean, who's impressed?
Who's impressed?
Listen, there's two teams.
He's going to give me an answer. He's going to give me an answer.
He's going to give you a serious
Kosovo.
answer, and I'm going to give you the truth.
It's not
How can you
Kosovo,
say?
and it's not Scotland.
How can you say?
Right.
How can you ask a question and saying who's impressed?
Yes.
When you're seeing the standard of the opposition.
No, I understand that.
Most of the games.
I understand that.
So
but having watched,
So tell me where they, apart from Holland playing Germany or some, in Germany I'm not great.
Yeah.
How can you say? How can we sit here and say what have you learned from Spain beating the Faroe Islands?
Why don't you go home? Tell you what, we'll reconvene when the tournament starts.
No.
When is it?
No.
No, but
For example, Belgium look like a good team, yes?
Against who?
Against Scotland.
Listen.
No, but Spain, for example,
That's my point.
didn't get me excited, despite the fact they're playing inferior opposition. That's what I mean.
Because players will switch off when it's not against, when they know they're going to pick up the 3 points.
But then we may as well not do a show. Just don't do a show during internationals. That's it.
Yeah, but you're asking me. You're asking me.
That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to talk about.
Yeah, but you're going to have to phrase it differently.
How do you want me to phrase it?
Don't say. Don't you talk. You ain't getting any brains
It's the
to
same
talk.
question. Just phrase it differently. What are you on about?
Ask a different question. Don't go to the end of the show and say.
Rephrase it.
Well, go on. Give us
you
an answer.
rephrase it
Go on.
a different way, but it's
Go
the
on.
same
Right, I'll
question.
tell you what. I'm going to ask you a question.
No, I'm just telling you what you've asked.
What did Belgium
You've just
learn? What did Belgium learn beating
Never
Scotland?
mind, just keep going. You've just asked them to rephrase it. So basically, it's the same question, but ask it a different way.
Well, you know, answer the question. What did Spain learn beating Faroe Islands? What did Belgium learn beating
I
Scotland?
never said they learned anything.
Well, you're about to give them an answer. Some sort of nonsense. Just to try and
I
keep
never said
everybody
they learned
happy.
anything.
Oh, I'll just keep my bosses happy. I'll give them the stock. I'll give them the stock answer.
How long we got for the segment?
We've got about 20 seconds
We'll just
left.
all sit here and look at the ceiling now.
No, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just give them the stock boring answer? Or why don't you give them the proper answer that you tell people when we're not on air? And say,
What are you talking about?
yeah.
What are you on about?
Why don't you give an honest answer like everybody else here and say the things you say before the camera rolls?
We've now run out of time for this segment.
I thought that was great.
No, never mind what I'm talking about.
Do we have an
I have no
answer?
idea what you're on about.
Yes,
Did we get an answer or not?
Extra time is available on
Can you
YouTube.
rephrase that question?
Football is over. Domestic action, of course, returns this weekend, as will Neymar to PSG. Scored, of course, Brazil during the break. Will he play this weekend?
That's the idea at the club, yes. They face Strasbourg at the Parc des Princes on Saturday afternoon, so he should be back early enough, if you want, after the game against Peru in LA on Tuesday night. Back in Europe, in Paris, early enough to be able to recover and then play on Saturday. Sometimes there's a bit of an issue with the players from South America. They come back quite late in international break and then they get rested. That's not the idea at the club at the moment. Thomas Tuchel and people at the club would like him to be involved in that game against Strasbourg. His first game since the end of last season, because he obviously hasn't played since during his whole transfer saga. Then he'll be suspended for the first 3 Champions League matches, so he wouldn't play against Real Madrid in midweek the following week. So that would be good against Strasbourg to give him a bit of game time. As we saw against Brazil, he looks fit, he looks on good form, so I think PSG are looking to benefit from that as well.
What about the fans, Jules?
That's the big question. Bigger than, you know, would they want him involved, would the coach and the players want him involved, because that's a yes. The fans is the big question mark, is the big unknown. What kind of reception will he get from the Parc des Princes, especially from the ultras, who were very violent, to be fair to him, during the transfer saga, with insults and banners and chants against him. It'd be very interesting to see what kind of reception he gets. You know, I guess his father will be there and some of the friends in their box at the stadium as well. What kind of reception will they get as well? How Neymar will feel about going back to the Parc des Princes, where he was so keen on leaving the club and leaving Paris in the summer. It'll be quite interesting, and I think all the cameras, all the photographers and everyone will have the eyes just on Neymar in the whole afternoon to see how he behaves and again, what kind of reception he gets.
It's quite an extraordinary situation, boys. As a player, can you ignore it?
Extraordinary situation brought on by himself.
Yeah.
So, and I've said it before, I have absolutely no sympathy for a man that wanted to go to France and he's tried his utmost to get out of France and hasn't been able to do it. And he's made his bed, he can lie on it. He has to get himself, well, as Jill said, he has to make sure he's fit and sharp and ready to play if needed for Thomas Tuchel. Because at the end of the day, That's his job.
Can you ignore it?
I think it's going to be... I'm interested to see what it's going to do to the rest of the players.
Right.
You know, somebody like Neymar, I think will be able to handle it and try and block it out. But I think it'll affect the rest of the team probably more than it will him. Right. I mean, listen, I played with John Barnes, and after England games, he would get a lot of stick away from home. And I can honestly say it affected me, because then I started trying to look after him. So I think the rest of the team are going to be affected probably more than Neymar might.
I actually think that Neymar, as we have seen in the past, is easy to tears. And I do believe that this will have an impact on the way he approaches the game. And it will impact his performances. Now, the way to cure all of that, his sadness, his joys, his frustrations, the fans' frustration, is for him to play and play well.
Yeah.
And do Neymar things out on the field. Not Neymar things being a clown, but Neymar things showcasing his talent. He does that enough times, all of a sudden, fans are fickle. They may just go, well, he's back, we love him, this is our guy. But in order to do that, you have to play well and do so consistently. It feels like that's the only way this thing turns around.
Meanwhile, this week we saw the finances unveiled of what teams have spent on their current squad.
PSG seeing where they... And I think for City, it's a very similar path towards where they are now. But, I don't think they had much choice if they wanted to be very competitive with the others. The fact is then, for other reasons than just the money spent, he hasn't really worked out for them in Europe. But you can't just blame it on how much they spend and seeing the result. I don't think it's embarrassing. It's just the way that so far he hasn't really worked out for them. But they had no other choice than spending the money.
I think winning the Champions League, in this case, is not really the barometer. I think making an attack on the Champions League would be the barometer. Everybody expects City to be making an assault on it again and be surprised if they don't go all the way and potentially win it. But we're not really thinking that, or not many are thinking that with PSG. That's the difference in terms of the team lineups at the moment and where the squads are. But, it's no surprise those two are up the top of the list with the spending.
That's it. We're done then for another show. All tomorrow is what really stood out from those Euro qualifiers, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can go over the
half-hour special.
I'll tell you what, we can go over the ashes of it again if you'd like.
That'd be very
Quite
good.
prepared to do so.
Thank you very much to Jules, to Craig, to Stevie and Ali. Be sure to check out Extra Time over on our YouTube channel. Until tomorrow, goodbye.